Hey guys, I'm Urizi. This story is all about what if Naruto became a demigod and fought a sea of monsters. After having a break, Naruto, Percy, and Annabeth come back to find that camp is dying and monsters are able to enter the border. To make things worse, Chiron has been replaced by someone who doesn't care about camp. Even, Grover is in trouble. The demigods must once again go on a quest to save camp, their new home. Unbeknownst to them, they are playing in the Crooked One's hands. Before we proceed with the story, please like and subscribe to this channel if you liked the video and don't forget to check the description for the other works of the author if you liked the story. Let's start. Chapter 1, Prologue. Welcome everyone. A college-aged young man with short-cropped sandy blonde hair, blue eyes, and a muscular build greeted his visitors. I'm glad you have accepted my invitation to join our cause. He continued. We have not agreed to join yet. A tall man wearing a black coat said. The man's face was ever-changing, like a mirage, but it always seemed to settle with the appearance of a gray-haired man with blue eyes. Yes. Considering you have failed before, how can you assure us of our victory now? This time it was a woman who spoke up. She had green eyes and black hair that barely came down to her shoulders. One could describe her as looking like a Greek statue, pale, beautiful, ageless. She was dressed in white robes covered in silver ornate designs. A smile spread across the sandy-haired teen's face, making the scar on his eye more prominent. That was only a minor misstep on my part. Our Lord still has plans for the future. How can you be so sure? A man that seemed to be dressed as a doorman asked. One glaring feature of this man was the two faces that he had. My Lord plans to make the great prophecy his own. The sandy-haired blonde stated. That seemed to pique his spectators' interest. We're listening, said the cloaked man, gesturing for him to continue. We are going to use this. The sandy-haired blonde brought out a vial from his pocket. This venom will be used on the pine tree on that camp. This way, we'll accomplish two things. My Lord would be rising sooner than any of them will expect, and another child of the Big Three will be unleashed into this world. You're sure this child of the Big Three will be swayed into joining you? The two-faced man asked. A pained expression could be seen on the sandy-haired teen's face. The gods had allowed her to die, no offense. I am sure she will hold bitterness and contempt in her heart as soon as she is unleashed. None taken. The three in the sandy-haired teen's audience said. Anyway, if that's not enough to convince you, now, the camp isn't the only one with help from the other world, courtesy of our sponsors. The teen explained. Fortunately for us, he is with us right now. Hello everyone, a man with very pale skin spoke. He had golden eyes with slitted pupils, purple markings around his eyes and fang-like teeth. He had pronounced cheekbones and straight waist-length black hair with some locks covering and framing his face or to his shoulders. He was flanked by two boys, one of which was older than the other. The older of the two had onyx eyes and ash-gray hair, which was kept in a ponytail. He wore black-rimmed circular glasses, a dark purple shirt with a high collar, a white undershirt, and dark purple pants with a white cloth waistband. He wore also dark purple fingerless gloves with armored plates on the back of the hand and a blue forehead protector with a single quarter note engraved on a metal plating. The younger lad had black eyes and spiky black hair with a blue tint hung over his face. He wore white long-sleeved shirt kept open at the torso and black arm guards that cover his forearms. He had dark blue pants, over which hangs a blue cloth that covers him from his stomach to his knees, secured with a purple rope belt. If I may ask, what is in it for us? The boy with spectacles asked. Well, for starters, power. This caught the attention of the black-haired boy. My Lord promises that we will be given power over our enemies once we win. We will have the power to make them suffer. And for some of you here, he continued. Recognition. During the reign of the present deities, you may have all been shoved to the side, unrecognized. In his reign, he promises you to be prominent. And to our guest from the elemental nations, I am sure you have made a deal with my Lord already. The sandy-haired boy asked. Yes, yes. His offer was quite intriguing. The pale-skinned man replied. I accept your terms. You have the shinobi of my village at your disposal. A golden sarcophagus glowed behind the sandy-haired boy. And what of our military power? Another teenaged boy in the crowd asked. The odd thing to our newcomers was that he radiated power. All the monsters, even those from far north, are loyal to my lord. Not only that, but his brothers are also rising, albeit at a much faster process than my lord himself. In addition to that, not all the demigods in that camp and those outside are loyal to the Olympians. Some of them are like me, holding grudges and bitterness to the fools in the council. They are loyal to my lord," said the sandy-haired teen. Nods were seen from the audience. "We pledge our loyalty to the Titan Lord," the three from earlier declared. "Excellent," the sandy-haired teen said. "As we speak, the army of our lord is assembling. They shall be transported in a cruise ship, courtesy of our sponsors, to the new Titan base in California." The sandy-haired teen stood up and held a glass in his hands. "I propose a toast to our victory. To Cronus. To Cronus." Chapter 2, Dodgeball of Death. It was great visiting Annabeth's place. Naruto and Annabeth had a wonderful time. Heck, they even went to DC together. At first, having two powerful half-blood scents attracted a lot of monsters. It was a good thing the blonde was there to take them out. Meeting Annabeth's dad, Frederick, was great, even had a man-to-man talk with Naruto. It went a little bit like this. "So, what's with you and my daughter?" Frederick asked. Wait. What's this all of a sudden?" Naruto asked in return, a bit flustered. "I can see how close my daughter is with you," stated Annabeth's dad. Naruto took a moment to answer. "And you just happen to be in town as Annabeth goes home?" "Yes." "Relax, son," Frederick said. "I'm not mad." The blonde sighed in relief. "You know what Annabeth is, uncle. You know who might come after us." "I know. I guess I should thank you for looking out for my daughter." "It's nothing, sir." "So, are you sure there's nothing going on between you and her?" Naruto struggled for words. "Uncle, we're friends. Close friends. That is how their conversation went, if I remember correctly, but that's a story for another time. It had only been a few days since they stayed there. A few monsters attacked here and there. We join our favorite blonde doing some last-minute training before bed, and watching over Annabeth's house at the same time. Hey, if you have access to the Kagebunshin, why not? Anyway, it was getting late. Fortunately, no monsters attacked today. Did I take them all out already?" Naruto said to himself as he stretched. "Might as well hit the hay." He made a half-ram seal and disappeared in a swirl of leaves. Naruto entered his room. It was one of the best apartments in the city. It wasn't one of those luxury apartments. He wasn't sure if he would find one those here, but he wasn't picky. So, he took a shower and changed into his pajamas. The next day they were going home, back to their home camp Half-Blood. That night, the blonde had a weird dream, no more like a nightmare. Percy was there too, for some reason. So the dream went like this. Grover, you know Grover, right, was hauling Goat Tail, holding his human shoes in his hands the way he does when he needs to move fast. He clopped past the little tourist shops and surfboard rental places. The wind bent the palm trees almost to the ground. Grover was terrified of something behind him. He must have just come from the beach. Wet sand was caked in his fur. He'd escaped from somewhere. He was trying to get away from something. A bone-rattling growl cut through the storm. Behind Grover, at the far end of the block, a shadowy figure loomed. It swatted aside a street lamp, which burst in a shower of sparks. Grover stumbled, whimpering in fear. He muttered to himself, "Have to get away. Have to warn them." Naruto and Percy couldn't see what was chasing him, but they could hear it muttering and cursing. The ground shook as it got closer. Grover dashed around a street corner and faltered. He'd run into a dead-end courtyard full of shops. No time to back up. The nearest door had been blown open by the storm. The sign above the darkened display window read, "St. Augustine Bridal Boutique." Grover dashed inside. He dove behind a rack of wedding dresses. The monster's shadow passed in front of the shop. Both boys could smell the thing, a weird thing for a dream. Anyway, the scent. No, no, more like the stench was a sickening combination of wet sheep wool and rotten meat and those weird sour body odor only monsters have, like a skunk that's been living off Mexican food, no offense Mexico. Grover trembled behind the wedding dresses. The monster's shadow passed on. Only silence could be heard, except for the rain. Grover took a deep breath thinking the thing was gone. Then lightning flashed. The entire front of the store exploded, and a monstrous voice bellowed. "Ma'inin." And that was about it. Naruto woke up in cold sweat. He wasn't sure what to make of that dream. It seemed a lot too real, like it was happening right before their eyes. Okay, demigod dreams often feel like that, but this time it was different. He had to push that to the back of his mind. After all, he and Annabeth are going home today. The blonde got up and showered. He had some breakfast at some restaurant. Then, he went on his way to pick Annabeth up at her place, after returning the keys to the owner. Naruto would miss this apartment. He had stayed here for a year. Sure, he had gone to school with Annabeth or had gone places with her and stuff, but you get the picture. So here was Naruto knocking at the Chase's residence with a bag slung on his shoulder. The door swung open revealing Annabeth. The blonde found himself staring at the daughter of Athena. "Come in, Naruto. I'm just about done," she said. "Did you have breakfast yet?" "Yep, I had some breakfast before I came here," Naruto said. Naruto smiled and went inside. There was utter chaos inside the house as usual. There were toys lying everywhere, courtesy of Annabeth's stepbrothers. The older blonde found a spot to sit on the couch. "I guess it's that time of the year again, hey Naruto?" Annabeth's stepmother asked Naruto. "Yeah, it's time to get back to camp," Naruto said. "Your stay here was quiet, I presume?" Somewhere outside the Chase residence. Little did the Chase family know, there was a hellhound stalking their residence picking up both of the demigods' scents. There was a small breeze behind the hound. It perked up picking up a scent of some kind. It looked around only to see the usual trees. The hellhound continued its earlier task. It was getting hungry and impatient. It was about to charge when a blue swirling orb was slammed onto the hound's face. There was blur of orange, and this time a kunai knife was embedded on its gut making the hellhound crumble into golden dust. A blonde-haired boy reared his hand back. Apparently, he was the one who stabbed the hellhound. He returned the kunai into his holster, and then raised his hand into a half-ram seal. The boy disappeared in a puff of smoke. Back in the Chase residence. "Yeah, pretty much," the blonde replied as the memories of the dispelled clone registered in his memories. "That's good then," Annabeth's stepmother said. "Mom, you're not giving Naruto a hard time, are you?" Annabeth asked as she entered the room. She had a Waterland bag slung over her shoulder and a suitcase at her side. "Of course not, dear. We're just talking," her stepmom said. "Well then, I guess it's time for you two to go." Both blondes nodded. The younger blonde was surprised when her stepmother wrapped her in a tight hug. "Thank you for giving us another chance, Annabeth," she whispered in daughter of Athena's ear. "It's nothing, Mom." Annabeth tried to wave it off. No. It means a lot. Just know that you have a home here to return to." "I know, Mom. I guess we better get going." Annabeth turned to Naruto. "Come on. Let's go say bye to Dad." New York. It had been a year since Naruto and Annabeth had been back here. Their ride back here was uneventful. Being ADHD demigods made it hell for the two of them. Frederick Chase had drove them back to Manhattan, not back to camp, since they were to meet Percy, so they could go back to camp together. During the trip, Annabeth had told Naruto about the weird dreams she had been having lately about camp. Naruto, in turn, told Annabeth about the nightmare he had about Grover. That only worried them even more, worried about their friend and worried about the camp they had called home. So, here we were in the bustling and busy streets of New York. Percy didn't finish school until this afternoon, and it was in the middle of the day. "Wanna go check Percy out at school?" Naruto asked. "What? Why?" Annabeth answered with a question. "Aren't you curious about what Percy was doing?" Naruto challenged. Or do you want to wait for Percy while we do nothing? Annabeth was in thought. Besides, I have a feeling something's going to happen today. Oh, alright. The girl relented. Cool, let's go. Meriwether College Prep. Let's sneak in. Naruto suggested. Are you crazy? What if we get caught? Annabeth said. We'll be fine. You got that cap of yours. Naruto waved off her concern. Yeah, but what about you? Annabeth asked. Naruto smirked. My Sagaku no Jutsu, Naruto said out loud with a half-ram seal. A moment later, he vanished. Annabeth almost jumped when a finger poked her on the back. Show off, she grumbled, and put on her cap of invisibility. And so, the two demigods sneaked inside the school. It wasn't hard for Annabeth to follow Naruto even though he was invisible. The older blonde never could resist the urge to prank someone in school. Oh, the evil thoughts that entered the mind of our favorite blonde shinobi. All those pranks he would pull on the campers once they get back. Anyway, they were able to find Percy on the way to gym class. Naruto, the prankster he was, whispered something in his ear. The son of Poseidon whipped his head back trying to find where the voice is. In the corner of his eyes, he saw the lockers shake for a second. Then, someone poked him in the back. The son of Poseidon was about to run out of the room when someone called out to him. This guy who called to him was 6'3" and built like the abominable snowman. His face was kind of misshapen and brutal looking. His voice was deep, but he talked funny, like a much younger kid. What's up, Tyson? Percy said. Will you, The now named Tyson tried to ask Percy a favor. The son of Poseidon knew immediately what the big guy was asking him to do. Oh. Yeah, sure, man. Tyson ducked inside the weight room. Percy stood guard outside the door while he changed. He felt kind of awkward doing this. After Percy was done, they made their way to the gym. Naruto's camouflage came undone, revealing him rolling on the floor laughing. Annabeth took off her cap, revealing her looking over Naruto and shaking his head at him. Will you stop pranking them for 1 minute? Annabeth scolded. Sorry. I can't help it. Naruto apologized. Hey Annabeth, what are you doing in here? Oh, I see. Annabeth was realizing what the blonde was implying. It's not like that, I didn't know you had it in you. Naruto continued. No. Oh, it's okay. I understand. Annabeth was now blushing really hard. To make things worse, the blonde kept teasing her, so she chased the blonde all over the locker room. The chase ended when Naruto slipped and rolled onto his back. Annabeth wasn't able to control her deceleration and she slipped and landed on top of the older blonde. Their faces were only mere inches from each other. The two stared at each other. Naruto had unconsciously wrapped his hands on Annabeth's waist. They held this position for a few moments. They were only brought back to reality when they heard a loud explosion coming from outside. The two quickly got up, with huge blushes on their faces, but they didn't have time to dwell on what happened. The two reapplied their invisibilities and ran outside to see what happened. At the gym floor, they saw that the exorcist mat burning and turned to shreds. Run! Percy shouted to the others. The other exit. They ran for the locker room, but with another wave of Joe Bob's hand, that door also slammed shut. No one leaves unless you're out. A giant roared. And you're not out until we eat you. The giant who shouted launched his own fireball. Percy's teammates scattered. The odd thing was the fireball ricocheted over something nobody could see and went back to the giant who threw it, making him dive to avoid it. He growled in anger. Percy reached for Riptide, which I always kept in my pocket, but then he realized that he was wearing gym shorts. Those shorts had no pockets. Another fireball came streaking toward Percy from the other giants. The big guy, Tyson, pushed him out of the way, but the explosion still blew him head over heels. The son of Poseidon found himself sprawled on the gym floor, dazed from smoke. His tie-dyed t-shirt was peppered with sizzling holes. Just across the center line, two hungry giants were glaring down at him. Flesh! They bellowed. Hero flesh for lunch. They both took aim. Percy needs help. Tyson yelled, and he jumped in front of Percy just as they threw their balls. Tyson! Percy screamed, worrying for the worst. Both balls slammed into the big guy, but he wasn't pushed back. Somehow, he caught the fireballs. He threw it back at the giants. Bayad! The giants screamed as the fireball exploded in their chest. The giants disintegrated in twin columns of flame. My brothers! The giant that seemed to be the leader wailed. He flexed his muscles and his baby cake's tattoo rippled. You will pay for their destruction. Tyson! Percy warned. Look out! Another comet hurtled toward the two. Tyson just had time to swat THRM aside. It flew straight to the really old coach sitting on the side of the room, but some unseen force sent it back to the cannibal giant. He was able to dive out of the way again, so it exploded right beside him with a huge kaboom. Kids were running around screaming, trying to avoid the sizzling craters in the floor. Others were banging on the door, calling for help. One kid stood petrified in the middle of the court, watching in disbelief as balls of death flew around him. The ancient artifact of a coach still wasn't seeing anything. He tapped his hearing aid like the explosions were giving him interference, but he kept his eyes on his magazine. Victory will be ours! Roared the giant leader. We will feast on your bones. Percy thought about his next move. He also thought of possible retorts for the giant king, but he resisted the urge to do so. The three remaining giants postured, hefting their fireballs ready to throw another volley. It was then that a crazy idea ran through Percy's mind. He ran towards the locker room. Move! He ordered his teammates. Away from the door. There were explosions behind the son of Poseidon. Apparently, Tyson had batted two of the fireballs back towards the owners, blasting them to ashes. Now there were only two giants remaining. A third ball hurtled straight at Percy. He forced myself to wait for the perfect moment, then dove aside as the fiery sphere demolished the locker room door. The pent-up pressure in the locker room caused a large explosion that blew apart the walls. Locker doors, socks, athletic supporters, and other various nasty personal belongings rained all over the gym. Percy turned just in time to see Tyson punch the lackey in the face. The giant crumpled. But the giant leader had wisely held onto his own ball, waiting for an opportunity. He threw just as Tyson was about to face him. The ball almost caught Tyson in the chest, except another invisible force kicked it back to the owner. The giant slid the length of the court and slammed into the wall, which cracked and partially crumbled on top of him. Tyson uncovered his eyes. He saw two blondes suddenly appear and stab the giant, making burst into a column of green flames. Standing triumphantly in the smoke were Annabeth and Naruto. Percy figured Naruto was the one who kicked back the fireballs, but it didn't make sense since his clothes should have been scorched. The kid, who'd been standing in the middle of the court dumbfounded the whole time, finally came to his senses. He blinked at the two blondes, as if he dimly recognized the two. They're from the picture. Annabeth punched him in the nose and knocked him flat. Shut up, brat. The gym was in flames. Kids were still running around screaming. There were sirens wailing in the distance, and a garbled voice over at the intercom. Through the glass windows of the exit doors, the headmaster was wrestling with the lock, a crowd of teachers piling up behind him. Annabeth. Naruto. Percy stammered. How long have you? Just before gym class. Naruto answered. You should see the faces of your schoolmates. Naruto was trying to stifle his laughter. Annabeth sighed. Although, she had to admit she was tempted to do the same pranks. She just had more self-control than the older blonde. You followed us all the way here? Percy asked. Even in the locker room. The daughter of Athena was red all over the face again. Naruto patted her on the head. Then, he moved to whisper something in Percy's ear. She's a closet. Annabeth punched the older blonde on the arm, not letting him finish. Naruto just snickered, massaging the punched area. There's no time for that. She snapped, the blush on her face still evident. I didn't. It's almost open, a woman screamed. The maintenance man was trying to open the doors and was close to getting it done. Naruto picked up a rock and placed it beside the kid, and then raised his right hand to his chest in a half-ram seal. In a puff of smoke, the rocks turned into some firecrackers. "Meet us outside," Annabeth told Percy while they watched Naruto. "What?" was Percy's smart answer. "No time," Naruto said as he set up a genjutsu for the teachers. "Get your gear. Don't worry about the mess." After that, the blondes disappeared. Outside the school, Annabeth and Naruto were waiting for Percy in an alley down Church Street. Naruto pulled the big guy and Percy off the sidewalk just as a fire truck screamed past, heading for Meriwether Prep. "Where'd you find him?" Annabeth asked distastefully, pointing at the big guy. "He's my friend," Percy said. "What's his name?" Naruto asked. "His name's Tyson," the son of Poseidon answered. "Is he homeless?" Annabeth asked. "What does that have to do with anything? He can hear you, you know. Why don't you ask him?" Percy said. The daughter of Athena looked surprised. "He can talk." "I talk," Tyson admitted. "You are pretty." "Ah. Gross." Annabeth stepped away from him. "Aw, come on, Annabeth," Naruto said. "He's right, Dateba yo. That's not the point," was the girl's reply. Percy glared at Annabeth for being rude to Tyson, then he examined Tyson's hands. "Tyson," he said in disbelief. "Your hands aren't even burned." "Of course not," Annabeth muttered. "I'm surprised the Laestrygonians had the guts to attack you with him around." "Yeah, he's a brave little one for his age," Naruto added. Percy looked at his friends oddly, and Tyson seemed fascinated by both blondes' hair. He tried to touch them, but Annabeth smacked his one hand away. "You like it, buddy?" Naruto asked. Tyson nodded, the fascination still in his face. "What are you talking about?" "Laestra what?" Percy asked. "Laestrygonians. The monsters in the gym. They're a race of giant cannibals who live in the far north. Odysseus ran into them once, but I've never seen them as far south as New York before," Annabeth explained. "Laestra," Percy struggled. "I can't even say that. What would you call them in English?" She thought about it for a moment. "Canadians," she decided. "Now come on, we have to get out of here. The police'll be after me," Percy stated. No, I got that covered." Naruto waved off his concern. "Then that's not our problem now," she said. "Have you been having the dreams?" "The dreams, about Grover?" Percy clarified. Naruto perked up. "You had dreams about Grover too?" "Yeah, wonder what that's about," Percy said. "I thought you were just part of the dream," Naruto commented. Her eyes looked stormy as he watched the two boys discuss their similar dreams. Her mind was racing a million miles an hour. "Camp," Annabeth said at last. "Big trouble at camp." Naruto nodded. "My mom was saying the same thing." "But what kind of trouble?" Percy said. "I don't know exactly. Something's wrong. We have to get there right away." "Have you had a lot of attacks?" Percy shook his head. "None all year, until today." "None? But how?" Her eyes drifted to Tyson. "Oh. What do you mean, oh?" Tyson raised his hand like he was still in class. "Canadians in the gym called Percy something, son of the sea god." The three exchanged looks. "Big guy," Percy decided to explain, "you ever hear those old stories about the Greek gods? Like Zeus, Poseidon, Athena?" "Yes," Tyson said. "Well, those gods are still alive. They kind of follow Western civilization around, living in the strongest countries, so like now they're in the US. And sometimes they have kids with mortals. Kids called half-bloods." "Yes," Tyson said, like he was still waiting for Percy to get to the point. Well, Annabeth, Naruto and I are half-bloods," he explained. "We're like heroes in training. And whenever monsters pick up our scent, they attack us. That's what those giants were in the gym." Monsters. Yes. Percy stared at him. He didn't seem surprised or confused by what he told him, which surprised and confused him. So, you believe me? Tyson nodded. But you are son of the sea god. Yes, he is, big guy. Naruto answered for him. Tyson frowned. Now he looked confused. But then. We don't have time for this, Annabeth said. She was still worried about camp. We'll talk in the taxi. A taxi all the way to camp. Percy said. You know how much money? Trust me. She declared. Percy hesitated. What about Tyson? We can't just leave him here, the son of Poseidon decided. Yeah. Annabeth looked grim. We definitely need to take him. Now come on. Percy didn't look happy at how Annabeth was acting towards the big guy. Naruto and Percy followed her down the alley. Together the four of them sneaked through the side streets of downtown while a huge column of smoke billowed up behind them from my school gymnasium. Here. Annabeth stopped them on the corner of Thomas and Trimble. She fished around in her backpack. I hope I have one left. Here you go, Annabeth. Naruto tossed a coin to Annabeth. It wasn't an ordinary coin. It had Zeus's likeness stamped on one side and the Empire State Building on the other. It was a drachma. You know taxis won't take that, right, Naruto? Percy said. Just watch, Percy. Naruto said. Stethe, she shouted in ancient Greek. O Harmadiabols. Naruto and Percy automatically translated that. She said, stop, chariot of damnation. Annabeth threw the coin into the street, but instead of clattering on the asphalt, the drachma sank right through and disappeared. Chapter 3, Hell of a Ride to a Bunch of Bull. A coin was thrown towards a spot in the ground. This was no ordinary coin. It was a coin that bore the likeness of Zeus on one side and the Empire State Building stamped on the other. It was a golden drachma. The drachma hit the ground, but instead of clattering on the asphalt, the drachma sank right through and disappeared. At first, nothing happened. Then, just where the coin had fallen, the asphalt darkened. It melted into a rectangular pool about the size of a parking space, bubbling red liquid like blood. Then a car erupted from the ooze. It was a taxi. But it was not just any ordinary taxi. Well, for starters, it wasn't yellow in color. It was smoky gray. Secondly, it wasn't solid. The vehicle looked like it was woven out of smoke, like you could walk right through it. Finally, there were words printed on the door, Grey Sisters. Our dyslexic demigods couldn't quite read that last one. The passenger window rolled down, and an old woman stuck her head out. She had a mop of grizzled hair covering her eyes, and she spoke in a weird mumbling way, like she'd just had a shot of Novocaine. Passage? Passage? She asked the group. For to Camp Half-Blood, Annabeth answered. She opened the cab's back door and waved at her companions to get in, like this was all completely normal. ACH. The old woman screeched. We don't take his kind. She pointed a bony finger at Tyson. Naruto sighed out loud. I'll give you more drachma when we get there. Done. The woman screamed. The four squeezed into the back of the taxi, which surprisingly grew to accommodate them. The interior was also smoky gray. The seat was cracked and lumpy, no different than most taxis. There was no plexiglass screen separating the passengers from the old ladies driving. Wait a minute. Did I just say old ladies, as in plural? There were really 3 of them. They were crammed in the front seat, each with stringy hair covering her eyes, bony hands, and a charcoal-colored sackcloth dress. The one driving said, Long Island. Out of Metro fare bonus. Ha. She floored the accelerator, and the 4 demigods' heads slammed against the backrest. A pre-recorded voice came on over the speaker. Hi, this is Ganymede, cupbearer to Zeus, and when I'm out buying wine for the Lord of the Skies, I always buckle up. Naruto was about to do so, but he noticed the seat belts were chains. He decided to use chakra to stick on the seats instead. The cab sped around the corner of West Broadway, and the gray lady sitting in the middle screeched, Look out. Go left. Well, if you'd give me the eye, Tempest, I could see that. The driver complained. The driver swerved to avoid an oncoming delivery truck, ran over the curb with a jaw-rattling thump, and flew into the next block. Wasp. The third lady said to the driver. Give me the girl's coin. I want to bite it. You bit it last time, Anger. Said the driver, whose name must have been Wasp. It's my turn. Is not. Yelled the one called Anger. The middle one, Tempest, screamed, red light. Brake. Yelled Anger. Instead, Wasp floored the accelerator and rode up on the curb, screeching around another corner, and knocking over a newspaper box. Excuse me, Percy said after getting over the G-force. But can you, see? No. Screamed Wasp from behind the wheel. No. Screamed Tempest from the middle. Of course. Screamed Anger by the shotgun window. Percy looked at Annabeth. They're blind. Not completely, Annabeth explained. They have an eye. One eye. Yeah. Each. No. One eye total. Hope that doesn't affect the trip, Naruto commented. Tyson groaned and grabbed the seat. Not feeling so good. Oh, man, Percy said. Hang in there, big guy. Anybody got a garbage bag or something? Nope. Sorry, Percy. Naruto answered. Oh. Let's hope Tyson lasts. Is it that bad? You don't wanna know. Percy left it at that. The Grey sisters were still squabbling. Percy gave Annabeth a look that said, "Why did you do this to me?" but she was too busy hanging on for dear life. Don't blame Annabeth, Naruto said. If this is the fastest way to camp, then we had no choice. We've had famous people in this cab. Anger exclaimed. Jason. You remember him? Don't remind me. Wasp wailed. And we didn't have a cab back then, you old bat. That was 3,000 years ago. Give me the tooth. Anger tried to grab at Wasp's mouth, but Wasp swatted her hand away. Only if Tempest gives me the eye. No. Tempest screeched. You had it yesterday. But I'm driving, you old hag. Excuses. Turn. That was your turn. Wasp swerved hard onto Delancey Street, squishing Percy between Tyson and the door. She punched the gas and the cab shot up the Williamsburg Bridge at 70 miles an hour. The three sisters were fighting for real now, slapping each other as Anger tried to grab at Wasp's face and Wasp tried to grab at Tempest's. The demigods could now see their faces now. None of the sisters had any teeth except for Wasp, who had one mossy yellow incisor. Instead of eyes, they just had closed, sunken eyelids, except for Anger, who had one bloodshot green eye that stared at everything hungrily, as if it couldn't get enough of anything it saw. Finally Anger, who had the advantage of sight, managed to yank the tooth out of her sister Wasp's mouth. This made Wasp so mad she swerved toward the edge of the Williamsburg Bridge, yelling, "I've it back! I've it back!" Tyson groaned and clutched his stomach. If anybody's interested, Percy spoke up, we're going to die. Don't worry, Annabeth tried to calm her friends, but she's sounding pretty worried herself. The Grey sisters know what they're doing. They're really very wise. That's reassuring. Naruto commented, not really reassured by Annabeth's words. They were now skimming along the edge of a bridge 130 feet above the East River. Yes, wise. Anger grinned in the rearview mirror, showing off her newly acquired tooth. We know things. Every street in Manhattan. Wasp bragged, still hitting her sister. The capital of Nepal. The location you seek. Tempest told the son of Poseidon. Immediately her sisters pummeled her from both sides, screaming, "Be quiet! Be quiet!" He didn't even ask yet. What? Percy said. What location? I'm not seeking any. Nothing. Tempest said. You're right, boy. It's nothing. Tell me. Percy was getting even more curious. No. They all screamed. The last time we told, it was horrible. Tempest said. I tossed in a lake. Anger agreed. Years to find it again. Wasp moaned. And speaking of that, give it back. No. Yelled Anger. Wasp yelled. Gimme. She whacked her sister, Anger, on the back. There was a sickening pop and something flew out of Anger's face. Anger fumbled for it, trying to catch it, but she only managed to bat it with the back of her hand. The slimy green orb sailed over her shoulder, into the back seat, and straight into Percy's lap. Percy jumped so hard that he hit his head on the ceiling and the eyeball rolled away. I can't see. All three sisters yelled. Give me the eye. Wasp wailed. Give her the eye. Annabeth screamed. I don't have it anymore. Percy screamed back. It's by your foot. Naruto pointed out. That's gross. Percy declared. I'm not picking that up. The taxi slammed against the guardrail and skidded along with a horrible grinding noise. The whole car shuddered, billowing gray smoke as if it were about to dissolve from the strain. Going to be sick. Tyson warned. Can anybody lend Tyson a backpack? Percy asked. Are you crazy? Get the eye. Annabeth ordered. Wasp yanked the wheel, and the taxi swerved away from the rail. The taxi hurtled down the bridge toward Brooklyn, going faster than any human taxi. The Grey sisters screeched and pummeled each other and cried out for their eye. At last, Percy steeled his nerves. He ripped off a chunk of his shirt, which didn't really matter cause it was already falling apart in the first place. He used the chunk of cloth to pick the eyeball off the floor. Nice boy. Anger cried, as if she somehow knew Percy had her missing peeper. Give it back. Not until you explain, Percy told her. What were you talking about? The location I seek. No time. Tempest cried. Accelerating. Outside the window, trees, and cars and whole neighborhoods were now zipping by in a gray blur. The taxi was already out of Brooklyn, heading through the middle of Long Island. Percy, Annabeth warned, they can't find our destination without the eye. We'll just keep accelerating until we break into a million pieces. Is going to affect the trip. Naruto yelled in worry. Oh gods, why did they only get one eye? First they have to tell me, Percy said. Or I'll open the window and throw the eye into oncoming traffic. No. The Grey sisters wailed. Too dangerous. I'm rolling down the window. Wait. The Grey sisters screamed. 30, 31, 75, 12. What do you mean? Percy inquired, not understanding what the Grey sisters yelled at him. That makes no sense. 30, 31, 75, 12. Anger wailed. That's all we can tell you. Now give us the eye. Almost to camp. They were now off the highway, zipping through the countryside of northern Long Island. Half-Blood Hill was already within sight. They could see the giant pine tree at the crest, Thalia's tree, which contained the life force of a fallen hero. Percy. Annabeth ordered with more urgency. Give them the eye now. Percy decided not to argue. He threw the eye into Wasp's lap. The old lady snatched it up, pushed it into her eye socket like somebody putting in a contact lens, and blinked. Whoa! She slammed on the brakes. The taxi spun 4 or 5 times in a cloud of smoke. The funny thing was Percy had somehow flown out of the seat and ended up lying on his friend's lap. He tried to get up, was spinning, but with very little luck. He ended up being thrown to the other end of the taxi. The taxi came into an abrupt halt in the middle of the farm road at the base of Half-Blood Hill, causing the passengers to lean forward. Then, when Wasp let go of the brakes, their heads whacked on the headrest of their seats. At that moment, there was a distinct eep from the only girl in the group. Suoft! Percy said out loud. Everyone turned to look at the son of Poseidon. A tick mark was growing on the son of Artemis' forehead. It turns out Percy took a bad timing to try and get up. When Wasp let go of the brakes after the abrupt halt, Percy's head was forced into the chest of Annabeth, who happened to be sitting near the window opposite of Percy's former place. Percy, you can get up any time now. Naruto said, with a crack of knuckles. Percy raised his head. In front of his face was Annabeth's developing womanly assets. He saw Tyson looking forward with a confused look, Naruto was looking at him with a tick mark on his forehead, and Annabeth was holding onto Naruto from the spinning of the taxi and blushing hard. No, no. It was an accident. Whack. Percy's face got slapped. When we get out of here, Annabeth started, but Tyson's words made her stop. People fighting. Tyson said. Naruto whipped his head forward to see what the big guy was looking at. His eyes widened, and then he said, "We have to go. Now." Annabeth looked at what the two were talking about. Oh no. Let's go. Half-Blood Hill. It was at this hill where Naruto and Percy fought Pasiphae's son, the half-man, half-bull creature. As if another joke from the fates, this time there were two bulls, but they were not your regular bulls, these ones were made of bronze. Oh, not enough for you? Well, they breathe fire. As soon as the group exited the taxi, the Grey sisters peeled out, heading back to New York, where life was safer. They didn't even wait for their extra 3 drachma payment, fortunately for her. They just left them on the side of the road. Oh, man, said Annabeth, looking at the battle raging on the hill. Well, what do you know? Bulls, again. Naruto commented as he charged onto the scene. One of the heroes shouted, "Border Patrol, to me." It was girl's voice, gruff and familiar. It's Clarice, Annabeth said. Come on, we have to help her. Normally, rushing to Clarice's aid was a bad idea. That was quite the understatement, but you get the picture. She would skewer you just for attempting that, but that was the least of their worries. Naruto jumped in front of the border patrol. Most of them were scattering, running in panic as the bulls charged. The blonde went over a few hand signs. Ninja boy? Clarice asked. Take the other two, Naruto ordered as he placed his hands on the ground. Doton, Doriyuki. As the bull was nearing the group of demigods, an earthen wall erupted from under the machine, making it rise from the ground. The blonde dashed forward, his limbs coating with earthen armor. When he was under the bull, he kicked it up higher into the air. Another Naruto appeared above with his hand, reared back, ready for a punch covered in earthen armor. Doton, Shokajugen no Jutsu. He shouted again. The punch connected, and the bull's abdomen cracked. The added weight from the jutsu made them sent them quickly back to earth. A small shockwave could be felt when they landed, and a small crater was dug in their wake. Naruto climbed up carrying the head of the golden bull. The other campers were looking at him. Oh hey, guys. Naruto said as if nothing happened. Did I overdo it? Everybody just stared at him. It was Clarice who broke the silence. You ruin everything. Clarice yelled at Percy. There were enough bulls for everybody. Percy was too stunned to answer. Annabeth answered for him, good to see you too, Clarice. Arg. Clarice screamed. Don't ever try saving me again. Clarice, Annabeth tried to calm her down, you've got wounded campers. That did the trick. As mean as the daughter of war may be, she still cared about her soldiers under her command. She glared at Percy. I'll be back. She growled and then trudged off to assess the damage. Where'd the other bull go? Annabeth asked. Don't tell me it. What other bull? Naruto asked. I was busy taking care of one. He turned to point at the crater. Oh, found it. He quickly added. With a huge stroke of luck, Naruto and the bull he fought landed on the third bull as it charged towards the other campers. How'd that happen? Percy asked. Naruto just shrugged. Anyway, Percy, there were 3 bulls, why'd you pick the one Clarice was fighting? Yeah, about that. Percy rubbed the back of his head, more importantly, Tyson, you're okay. How? He changed the subject. Oh my, you haven't noticed yet? Naruto asked. Tyson looked down like he was embarrassed. I am sorry. Came to help. Disobeyed you. My fault, Annabeth said. I had no choice. I had to let Tyson cross the boundary line to save you. Otherwise, you would have died. Let him cross the boundary line. Percy asked. But. Take a good look at him, Percy, Naruto suggested. I mean, take a really good look. Percy took a while as he did. He was having a little trouble at first, but he managed to focus on his nose. His eyes traveled a little higher. The son of Poseidon's eyes widened as he slowly realized. Tyson, he stammered. You're a Cyclops. Bingo. Naruto said. You've been with him for, what did you say? A year now? And you didn't notice? Yeah, Percy, and he's a baby, by the looks of him, Annabeth explained. Probably why he couldn't get past the boundary line as easily as the bulls. Tyson's one of the homeless orphans. One of the what? Percy asked, getting more confused. They're in almost all the big cities, Annabeth explained further. The distaste could be heard in her voice. They're mistakes, Percy. Children of nature, spirits and gods, well, one god in particular, usually, and they don't always come out right. No one wants them. They get tossed aside. They grow up wild on the streets. I don't know how this one found you, but he obviously likes you. We should take him to Chiron, let him decide what to do. He's crafty, I'll give him that, Naruto commented. What? Percy asked. Well, you know about their oath, about not having demigod children. Yeah. He's technically not breaking the oath with Tyson. What are you talking about? Percy asked. More importantly, the fire. How? Annabeth sighed. Haven't you learned anything from Greek mythology, seaweed brain? He's a Cyclops. She said as if was remembering an unpleasant memory. They work the forges of the gods, Perce. They have to be immune to fire. Naruto continued for her as he comforted the daughter of Athena, who was clearly shaken by her memories. It would be an understatement if you would say that Percy was shocked. But it was a bad time to be dumbfounded. Around them, there were wounded campers and patches of burning grass. And there were the bulls to dispose of. Clarice came back over and wiped the soot off her forehead. Jackson, Uzumaki, if you can stand, get up. We need to carry the wounded back to the big house, let Tantalus know what's happened. Tantalus? Percy asked. The activities director, Clarice said impatiently. Chiron is the activities director. And where's Argus? He's head of security. He should be here. Countered Percy. Clarice made a sour face. Argus got fired. You have been gone too long. Things are changing. But Chiron, he's trained kids to fight monsters for over 3,000 years. He can't just be gone. What happened? That happened, Clarice snapped. She pointed to Thalia's tree. Everyone looked at the direction where she was pointing. Now that the fighting had gone down, they noticed the changes from Thalia's pine. The pine's needles were now yellow. A huge pile of dead ones littered the base of the tree. In the center of the trunk, 3 feet from the ground, was a puncture mark the size of a bullet hole, oozing green sap. This made Naruto's eyes widen. He ran towards the tree. What's with him? Clarice asked. Percy shrugged. Inside Thalia's limbo, the usual background of Thalia's life was gone. It was now tinged in a purplish hue. Thalia lay in the corner in pain from some kind of illness. Although, our favorite blonde now knows she was poisoned. He walked forward and sat beside the daughter of Zeus. Hey Blondie. The daughter of Zeus struggled to speak. How'd this happen? Naruto asked. I don't know. She winced in pain. Whoever did this was hidden somehow. It must be one of Luke's minions, or maybe. The blonde shinobi said. Don't worry Naruto. I'm tougher than I seem. The blonde smiled. I know. It's just I can't bear to see you like this. Okay, Fox. Lend me some power. Naruto said deep within his mindscape. Thalia could feel the warmth coming from Naruto. There was a distinct coldness to it, but it was overwhelmed by Naruto's warmth. What are you doing? Thalia asked. I was hoping maybe the fox's power could help you. Naruto explained. They sat there for a while, red energy flowing from Naruto's hand into Thalia's. The look of pain seemed to go away from the daughter of Zeus' face, but Naruto was panting hard. Feel better? He asked. A little. Thalia said. But are you okay? I don't know how long this would last, but I'm glad it's working. Don't worry about me. You need it more. Thank you, Naruto. It's no biggie. I would do anything for a friend. Speaking of your friends, they'll be looking for you. What about you? I'll be fine. I told you I'm tougher than I look. Just go and protect the camp. A sad look washed over her face. I can't quite do that right now. Leave it to me, Naruto said, grin on his face. Kemp Half-Blood. Kemp was still the same as when Naruto left with Annabeth. The big house was still there with its blue gabled roof and its wraparound porch. The strawberry fields still baked in the sun. The same white columned Greek buildings were scattered around the valley: the amphitheater, the combat arena, the dining pavilion overlooking Long Island Sound. And nestled between the woods and the creek were the same cabins, a crazy assortment of 12 buildings, each representing a different Olympian god. Naruto looked back up at the pine tree. The yellow pine needles were still there. Before, a demigod would feel safe within the borders. Now, there was an air of danger. Anyone could tell something was wrong. Instead of playing volleyball in the sandpit, counselors and satyrs were stockpiling weapons in the tool shed. Dryads were armed with bows and arrows as they talked nervously at the edge of the woods. The forest looked sickly, the grass in the meadow was pale yellow, and the fire marks on Half-Blood Hill stood out like ugly scars. They weren't happy campers anymore. Sorry, I had to get that joke out. Naruto made his way to the big house only to find Chiron with his friends making their way out. So, they fired you, huh, Chiron? Naruto asked, hoping for a different answer. Yes, my boy. Some of the Olympians do not trust me anymore ever since that happened. Chiron answered. Naruto sighed. Now, what will we do when you're gone? I will tell you what I told Percy as well. You must stay here, and train hard. That goes without saying, Chiron. The centaur nodded. Where will you go? I will stay in exile in the Everglades until this matter is resolved, one way or another. I must go. We'll see you later, Chiron. I promise, we'll clear your name. Don't make promises, my boy, especially those you know you can't keep. I never go back on my word, Chiron. That's my ninja way. I promise on my life, no, on the river Styx, that we will find a way to clear your name. Chiron smiled. Thank you, my boy. But I tell you, be careful not to break that promise. With that, Chiron galloped toward the hills and disappeared. No pony. Tyson started bawling as Chiron left. Where'd you go, Naruto? Percy asked. Naruto wasn't sure if he should tell Percy or not, but Annabeth nodded, gesturing him to go ahead and tell him as she wiped the tears from her eyes. I went to, see Thalia. Naruto said. How is that possible? Percy asked. She's not dead, Percy. She's just stuck in a limbo. The blonde explained. So when Zeus? Naruto nodded. You know? Percy asked Annabeth. He told me while we were back at home. Annabeth answered. How'd you take it? I thought he was lying at first. But I felt happy. I had some hope that someday I could see her again. I promised her I would get her out. I just don't know how to start. A conch horn blew. They didn't notice it was already sundown, and their stomachs were grumbling. They all ran to join the others at the dining pavilion. Annabeth went on to join her siblings from the Athena cabin, a dozen boys and girls with blonde hair and gray eyes like hers. The other cabins entered the pavilion single file lines. Next to the Athena cabin was Clarice and Ares' cabin. Then Charles Beckendorf and the Hephaestus cabin arrived. The other cabins filed in: Demeter, Apollo, Aphrodite, and Dionysus. Naiads came up from the canoe lake. Dryads melted out of the trees. From the meadow came a dozen satyrs, which stirred Percy and Naruto's memory of the dream they both had. Finally, there was the Hermes cabin led by Connor and Travis Stull. The two boys remembered them from their time in the God of Travelers cabin. Percy had gone around telling everyone that it was funny that their last name was Stull, being the god of thieves' sons, but no one seemed to get the joke, except for Naruto. As soon as the last campers had filed in, the two boys led Tyson into the middle of the pavilion. Conversations faltered. Heads turned. Who invited that? Somebody at the Apollo table murmured. Percy glared in their direction, but he couldn't figure out who'd spoken. From the head table, a familiar voice drawled, well, if it isn't Peter Johnson. My millennium is complete. Chapter 4, Preparations. The sun was setting on another day. Cabin 7's glow was dying down and Cabin 8 was starting to light up. But these cabins were empty, all of the cabins were empty. Everyone was currently in the amphitheater. Everyone stared at the newcomers. From the head table, the familiar voice of the camp director, Dionysus, drawled out to them, Peter Johnson, my millennium is complete. Percy gritted his teeth, Percy Jackson, sir. Yes, that's what I said, Mr. D said with disinterest. So, that's the QB brat. A new face whispered to Mr. D's ear. They have seen this guy before, just not here at camp. Well, Naruto and Percy saw him in the fields of punishment from afar, but they still saw him. This man was pale and horribly thin. He was wearing an orange jumpsuit with the numbers 0001 in the pocket. He had blue shadows under his eyes, dirty fingernails, and badly cut gray hair. His facial expression was angry, frustrated, and hungry all at the same time. This was Tantalus. Mr. Johnson's companion? Yes. Father is wary of him. Mr. D answered. And the other one is Poseidon's brat? The Tantalus asked again. Mr. D nodded as he sipped his Diet Coke. Ah, yes. Tantalus said. Them. He cleared his throat. I am Tantalus. I am on special assignment here until further notice from Lord Dionysus here. I hope you two don't cause any trouble here. Trouble? Percy's anger flared. Yes, Mr. Johnson, Mr. D waved his hand. A newspaper appeared on the table. There was a picture of Meriwether Prep in flames on the front page. This was your doing, yes? No, you brah. Before Percy could finish that sentence, Naruto covered his mouth and answered for him. Of course not, Mr. D. Mr. Uzumaki, Tantalus said as soon as he heard the shinobi's voice. I know your little secret. I trust that you will keep the cue. A kunai whizzed past the new activities director's head, impaling itself on one of the posts. I wouldn't recommend agitating him if I were you. Mr. D warned him. Oh, Lord Dionysus, what's there to worry about? Tantalus waved him off. He won't harm me, will you, Mr. Uzumaki? Naruto clenched his fist, but he didn't want to pick this fight. Tantalus wouldn't hesitate to reveal his secret if he did. Instead, he turned away and went to his mother's table, making Tantalus smirk. Annabeth looked at him in worry, while the others warily looked at him. A satyr inched forward and nervously placed a plate of barbecue in front of the Tantalus. He licked his lips. Finally. Some food, Tantalus said, but he sounded unsure. Root beer. Bark's special stock. 1967. His hands inched forward, hesitating to grab his goblet. Go on, old fellow, Mr. D said. Perhaps now it will work. Tantalus grabbed for the glass, but it scooted away before he could touch it. A few drops of root beer spilled, and Tantalus tried to dab them up with his fingers, but the drops rolled away like quicksilver before he could touch them. He growled in frustration and turned toward the plate of barbecue. He picked up a fork and tried to stab a piece of brisket, but the plate skittered down the table and flew off the end, and committed suicide in the bronze brazier. Tantalus complained, "Phew." A random sneeze among the campers censored his curse. Language, Mr. D commented. Then, he added false sympathy to his voice. Perhaps your curse needs a few more days before it could fade away. Believe me, old chap, working in this camp is torture enough. Eventually, Tantalus muttered, but he wasn't looking at the god of wine. Do you know how dry one's throat gets when he hasn't had anything to drink in the last 1,000 years? You. Percy said after a moment of realization. Tantalus smirked. You recognize me, boy. You're the spirit from the fields of punishment, Percy said. The one with the fruit tree hanging over you, but you can't eat or drink. A real scholar, aren't you, boy? Tantalus sneered. You must have done something really horrible to be sent there, Percy said, mildly impressed with himself. Tantalus' eyes narrowed. The satyrs behind him were waving at Percy, warning him to stop what he was doing. I'll be watching you, Percy Jackson. You too, Naruto Uzumaki, I know you're listening. Tantalus said. I don't want any problems at my camp. Naruto wisely remained silent. And Percy, well, he didn't get the message the satyrs were signaling him. Your camp already has problems, sir. Mr. D sighed. Oh, will you sit down, Johnson? I believe that's your table over there, the one where no one sits. Percy's anger was burning, but he followed Naruto's example and decided not to fight back. Come on, Tyson, he said to his friend. Oh no, Tantalus stopped him. That monster stays here. We must decide what to do with it. Him, Percy corrected. He has a name, you know? It's Tyson. Tantalus raised his eyebrows. Tyson saved the camp, sir, Percy insisted. He pounded one of the bulls. Only because you ignored one of them, someone from the crowd shouted. That's not the point. Percy shouted back. And what a pity it would have been if it destroyed the camp, Tantalus said. Mr. D snickered. Leave us, the new activities director ordered. While we decide the creature's fate. Percy glared at Tantalus, but he was too busy trying to grab his food. He, then, turned to Tyson and said, Don't worry, big guy. We're just right here. We'll find you someplace to sleep tonight. I believe you. You are my friend. Tyson said. Tyson's words made Percy feel guilty. He just nodded and trudged onto his father's table. As was customary, the campers filed in front of the brazier to offer to the gods before they started eating. Naruto and Percy sat down to eat half-heartedly, even the ramen in front of Naruto couldn't cheer the shinobi up. Once the campers were back in their seats, the activities director had a satyr blow a conch horn. Yes, well, Tantalus announced. Another fine meal. Or so I am told. As he spoke, his hand inched closer towards his refilled dinner plate, like it wouldn't notice him. He was wrong. His hands were 6 inches from the food when the plate shot itself right across the table. And on my first day of authority, he continued. I'd like to say what a pleasant form of torture it is to be here. I hope to interact with you, children. You look good enough to eat. Mr. D clapped politely, while the rest of the camp gave half-hearted applause. Tyson, who was standing by the head table, tried to hide behind the posts, but every time he did so, Tantalus always pulled him back. Now, some changes, a crooked smile appeared on his face. As of tomorrow, the chariot races are reinstituted. Some of the campers protested while others were excited by the news, still, others remained silent, the fear evident in their eyes. Tantalus cleared his throat. Now I know these races were discontinued some years ago due to technical problems. 3 deaths and 26 mutilations, someone from the Apollo cabin said. Yes, yes. Tantalus spoke further. But I know you will all join me in welcoming the return of one of the camp's traditions. The first race will be in 3 days. We will release you from your regularly scheduled activities so you can prepare for the race. Now, Naruto wasn't really listening to Tantalus' speech, but when he heard that all activities were suspended to prepare, he spoke up. What about defending the camp? Clarice stood up with him and said, Yeah. What about border patrol? Tantalus waved them off. I'm sure nothing untoward will happen as you, children, prepare. The campers weren't convinced by the activities director's words, but what he said next got them on board, no questions asked. Did I mention the winner gets no chores for the month? There was an explosion of excited chatter. For real? Travis asked from the Hermes table. Yes, Tantalus nodded. In addition to that, the winners would get to wear golden laurels. The chatter turned into cheering. Nobody really cared about the laurels. They were still pretty hyped from the no KP for a month, but the activities director still looked pretty proud of himself. And now to address our one housekeeping issue, He pointed to Tyson. This thing was brought in by Naruto Uzumaki, Percy Jackson, and Annabeth Chase. The loud cheers turned to uneasy murmurs. A lot of the campers were glancing at the three demigods. Percy and Naruto wanted to kill the dead man. Now, of course, Cyclopes have a reputation of being bloodthirsty monsters. That depends, Naruto cut him off. Are we talking about the rogue Cyclopes or those that work in the underwater forges? Snickers could be heard from the crowd. Tantalus' face twitched, but he regained his composure and cleared his throat. Okay then, since Mr. Uzumaki is suggesting that this Cyclops is tame, perhaps the Hermes cabin would like to take this thing. The two cabin counselors gained a sudden interest in the tablecloth. Way to add to my words, genius, Naruto said back. Tantalus was about to retort when a bright glowing holographic image appeared on top of the Cyclops' head, making the activities director scoot away in surprise. Swirling above Tyson's head was a glowing green trident. There was a moment of odd silence. It was only broken when Tantalus roared in laughter, causing the whole camp to laugh with him. Everyone joined in laughter except Naruto and his friends. Well, I know where to put the beast now. By the gods, I can see the family resemblance. Tantalus said in between fits of laughter. That was it about dinner. All the campers left the dining pavilion for the campfire, but Naruto had other plans. After his secret almost gets revealed, he needed some time to think. Naruto was on his way near the trees to find a good spot to sit when a female voice called out to him. They'll be looking for you at the campfire, you know, Annabeth asked. I could ask you the same question, Naruto said back. Well, Tantalus said something earlier. I remember you pretending to fall asleep when we asked you about it. Was it the same power Grover was scared about when you fought Ares? I'm not getting out of this conversation, huh? Naruto asked. No, you're not, Naruto. Another voice said. This time it was Percy with Tyson tagging along. So, what's the deal with that red energy? I guess it can't be helped. Naruto mumbled. Okay, let's go for a walk. Somewhere in the woods. So that's it, Naruto finished. Now you know my story. The three demigods and Cyclops were sitting by a tree. Naruto had told him about the nine-tailed fox sealed within him and his horrible childhood. Naruto. I am sorry. Annabeth wrapped Naruto with a hug. It must have been hard. Yeah, Naruto. Percy added. You're tough for being able to live through that. Naruto's eyes widened. You guys aren't scared of me. Why would we be scared of you? Annabeth let up her hug. 'Cause the villagers see me as a walking natural disaster ready to explode at any moment, Naruto explained. I was thinking you guys would. Well, those guys are idiots. Percy said. You mean? Yes, Naruto, Annabeth said. We're not as shallow as the villagers. Thanks, guys, Naruto smiled for the first time that night. I guess Thalia was right. Sorry for not telling you earlier. That's fine, man. I mean we're walking natural disaster too, right? Percy said. Annabeth nodded. He's right, Naruto. We understand where you're coming from. So, the others will? Annabeth and Percy nodded. So, Annie, could you let up on Tyson? Naruto told the daughter of Athena. I mean, what you're doing to him is pretty much what they did to me back then. Annabeth's voice faltered. Naruto, that's... It's not like I'm asking you to like him right away. At least just give him a chance. Percy added. I suppose, Annabeth said. I'll try. It was Naruto's turn to wrap the daughter of Athena in a hug. Thank you. Percy cleared his throat to break the two from their hug. Well, that's nice and all, but Tantalus is still the new activities director. I know just what to do. An evil smile spread over Naruto's face along with a familiar gleam in his eyes. Why do I get a feeling this isn't going to end well? Annabeth commented. Well, for Tantalus at least. Percy added. I'm going to need Travis and Connor's help, Naruto announced as an evil laugh escaped his lips. Naruto, I worry about you sometimes. Percy said. A few days later. Unlike what Tantalus said, the few days after that were not as torturous as he described them to be. For one, he was too busy constantly looking over his shoulder. He had been extremely paranoid, like every little sound was going to explode on him. He was right to be cautious. Like during the second day of his stay at camp. Flashback. The campers were quite nervous as they woke up, except for a few of the campers, namely Naruto Uzumaki, Connor Stahl, and Travis Stahl. Naruto exited his cabin with a huge smile plastered on his face. The two counselors of the Hermes cabin couldn't stop giggling. Their cabin mates were asking them what was going on. They just waved them off, saying, "Just wait and see." All the campers had woken just as they had done in the past and then made their way to the dining pavilion for breakfast. Only Mr. D was at the head table, along with a few satyrs. "I wonder where the old chap is." Mr. D wondered aloud in an uninterested manner. Speaking of the activities director, he woke up later than the campers did. He stood up from the cot that was set up in the room he was sleeping in. He decided to take a shower before heading out. It's not like he was going to eat or anything. As he entered the showers, a chill went up his spine. "Why do I have a bad feeling all of a sudden?" he thought, but just shrugged it off. And so, he took his shower like nothing bad was going to happen. We all know something bad is going to happen. When he was done, he wiped his face first, then his body. He looked at his face in the mirror. A look of horror could be seen in his face. At the dining pavilion, the campers were peacefully enjoying their breakfast, when an ear-piercing scream broke the peaceful morning air. The scream came closer as Tantalus approached. As he came within view, a few snickers could be heard from the campers. Tantalus came running into the dining pavilion screaming curses as he approached. He was covered in mossy green paint from head to foot. Even his towel that wrapped his lower body was covered in the paint. In his rush to get to the pavilion to reprimand whoever did this to him, he wasn't able to dress himself. "Okay. Who is the wise guy behind this?" Tantalus roared at the campers, though they didn't take him seriously. More snickers could be heard from the crowd. "I see. No one is going to confess, I see." He roared again. The new activities director started spouting the different forms of torture that he would subject the perpetrator once he found out who did it. He was getting worked up and carried away, causing him to make erratic movements as he narrated the forms of torture. He didn't notice that the towel on his waist was loosening. A few seconds later, the towel on his waist came undone, and he went commando on the whole entire camp. The ladies in the crowd covered their eyes as soon as this happened, while the boys looked over in jest. "It's a bit on the small side." Someone from the Aries table commented. Who was? He was about to ask who said that when he noticed a camera perched on the post with the Greek symbol of ETA. He was being broadcasted at Hephaestus TV. That meant his below-average dong was seen by the whole godly world. The thought of that made him faint. The campers roared in laughter after that. Even the god of wine let out a few chuckles. End of flashback. Yeah, days after that started just like that, with Tantalus screaming his lungs out or him being humiliated in front of the whole camp. So, Naruto was walking around camp enjoying another awesome day. When he made it to the pier, he saw Annabeth and Percy fighting over something, with the latter storming off. "Geez, what was that about?" Naruto asked Annabeth. "Those girls from Aphrodite were making fun of him," Annabeth explained. "And you were fighting about that?" Naruto asked again. Annabeth shook her head. "I tried calming him down, but I guess that just made him mad." "What did you say?" "I told him that it wasn't his fault that he had a monster as his brother, and then he lashed out at me." "Oh damn, and here I was telling you to lay off on Tyson. Seems he doesn't accept Tyson as his brother, yet." Yeah. It was quiet for a while, but Naruto decided to change the subject. "Those are some awesome chariot designs," he started. "Oh thanks," Annabeth said. "Percy and I were supposed to use them, but I guess that's not going to happen anymore." "Too bad," Naruto said. "Speaking of which, are you working on a chariot with anyone as of yet?" Annabeth inquired. That, it kinda slipped my mind with all the pranking we've done. I almost thought you were working with the Hermes cabin." "No. We're just working together for the pranks." Suo, want to work with the Athena cabin? Sure, why not? Cool, let's go over some of the designs. The next couple of days, the blonde duo worked hard on their chariots. Making them was a lot quicker than they both realized. Well, we all know the reason why they finished it quicker than everyone else. Ahem, Naruto's Kagebunshin ahem. So for the remaining days before the race, Annabeth had asked Naruto for some fighting lessons, to which the latter obliged. So, what do we do first? Annabeth asked. Well, first we have to train your body. We'll do basic exercises. Okay. The first exercise they did was some laps around the camp. The first lap they did was easy enough, but in the middle of the second lap, Annabeth started to slow down. Naruto thought that she would be gasping for air by the end of the first one, but Annabeth proved him wrong. The usual training at camp proved to aid them even just a bit. They went on like that for the rest of the morning. Naruto had Annabeth do the basic training exercise that he did at camp. They did some push-ups, sit-ups, squats, and the like. At the end of the routine, Annabeth felt her body give on her. She was exhausted from everything Naruto made her do. Though, he was already going easy on her. Can you keep going? Naruto asked Annabeth. I should be able to. She answered. We'll rest for a bit before we continue. Annabeth sighed in relief. She was trying to act tough in front of Naruto. There's no need to push yourself too hard, Naruto said. You'll get stronger. I know. It's just. Never mind. I'll tell you next time. Okay. An hour later, Annabeth and Naruto moved to the archery range. Fortunately, the archery class was over. The two blondes stood a few feet from one of the targets. What are we doing here? Annabeth inquired. Wait and see, Naruto answered. From his pouch, Naruto brought out a kunai and threw it to the target. The knife hit dead center. Annabeth had stars in her eyes. Naruto, that's amazing. Thanks, Naruto grinned. Watch this. Naruto brought out 6 kunai. He suddenly disappeared. He appeared upside down a few feet above the ground with his arms crossed. He threw the kunai 2 at a time which ricocheted from one another. When he landed, all of the kunai hit their mark, even the targets that were out of the way got hit in the dead center. Wow. You're really good with the knives. Annabeth praised. Not just with the knives, Naruto added. I'm good with bows and basketballs too. Probably because your mother is Artemis. Yep. So what do you want me to do? You're going to practice throwing the kunai. Right. Annabeth picked up a kunai from Naruto's pouch which he left on the ground. Naruto showed her the proper way to hold the kunai and the proper stance when throwing just as they were taught in the academy. This is okay, knives are my specialty. I can do this. The daughter of Athena thought. Annabeth held the knife and aimed for the target. She let the kunai fly. The knife hit just outside the main circle. She frowned. She picked up another one. This time it was a little close. She was getting frustrated. She picked up yet another one. This one was worse than before. Arg. Annabeth stomped her feet. Relax, Annabeth, Naruto calmed her down. With a bit of practice, you'll get the hang of it too. Easy for you to say. You're her son. Annabeth argued. Naruto shook his head. Believe it or not, I didn't start out like this. Ask Eureka-sensei. Was he your teacher? Yeah, he was one of the teachers in the academy who never gave up on me. I see. So, get your head up from the dirt and try again. Alright. And so, Annabeth continued throwing until about 11 o'clock. I think that's enough training for one day. Naruto said. Oh, thank the gods. My arms are getting sore. Annabeth complained. Sorry about that. I didn't push you that hard, did I? Naruto asked with worry. No, no. I'm okay. You're doing fine. It's just that I'm not used to this kind of training. Annabeth said. You should see my friend, Lee, train. How hard does he train? He does everything we did so far, twice, or maybe with 3 times the effort. Maybe even more than that. That hard, huh? Yep, check this out. Naruto removed one of the weights on his ankles. Try carrying that. Annabeth moved over and tried to pick up the ankle weight. She couldn't even budge it. Heavy, isn't it? Naruto asked. How can you move with that on your feet? Annabeth asked in turn. It takes some getting used to. The first time I wore it when I started training with Lee, I couldn't even move my feet, so they toned it down for me. Will you let me wear something like this too? Yep, I am planning to, but I don't think I would go to the extremes. Oh, thank the gods. They both chuckled. Well, that's our training done. Let's dry this sweat off and take a shower. Naruto said. Sure. Chapter 5, Attack of the Demon Birds. A satyr was standing in a dank cave, lit only by torches. The satyr was wearing a wedding that didn't fit him very well. The neckline kept falling off his shoulders, and a tattered veil was covering his face. He was staring in one corner of the cave. 2 boys appeared in the corner the satyr was staring at. The blonde struggled to hold in his laughter when he saw the satyr. Grover, when's the wedding? Not the time, Naruto. The other boy punched the blonde on the shoulder. What's going on? Grover's cheeks reddened a bit. Percy? Naruto? Can you hear me? From behind the boulder covering the cave, a monstrous voice yelled. Honey pie. Are you done yet? A little puppy barked in the corner. The satyr flinched. His voice changed to a falsetto. Not quite, dearest. A few more days. Bah. Hasn't it been 2 weeks yet? The monstrous voice asked. The puppy continued barking. No, dearest. Just 5 days. That leaves 12 more to go. Grover stated in the falsetto voice. There was silence from the other end of the boulder. Only the puppy barking could be heard. Grover quietly tried to shush the dog. The dog complied and instead growled. The monster, who struggled to try to do the math, finally said, All right, but hurry. I want to see under that veil, heh. By the way, was that a dog I heard? No, Grover answered. It must have been the wind. The wind can bark. Of course it can. Oh, okay. Hurry up with the veil, heh. After that, the monster left. Grover sighed in relief, then turned to the 2 boys he contacted. There was urgency in his voice. You have to help me. No time. I'm stuck in this cave. On an island in the sea. Okay, calm down, Grover. Where are you? Naruto asked. I don't know exactly, Grover answered. I went to Florida, and I turned left. Florida? Left. Percy asked in confusion. Grover didn't answer Percy. Instead, he further explained. You have to be careful. It's a trap. This is the reason no satyr has ever returned from this quest. He's a shepherd, you guys. And he has it. Its nature magic is so powerful it smells just like the great god Pan. The satyrs come here thinking they've found Pan, and they get trapped and eaten by Polyphemus. Polly who? Percy asked again, getting further confused. Geez, Percy. Polyphemus, Naruto emphasized each syllable so the son of Poseidon could understand. He's that Cyclops from the myths. Grover nodded to that. Yeah, him. I almost got away. I made it all the way to St. Augustine. But he followed you. Percy asked, starting to get on the same page. And you got trapped at the bridal boutique. Right. Grover answered. My first empathy link must have worked back then. But you were busy running for your life to notice, Naruto deduced. Yeah, Grover answered. Look, guys, this dress is the only thing keeping me alive right now. He thinks I smell good, but I told him it was just goat-scented perfume. Thank goodness he can't see very well. His eye must have not healed yet from the last time, Naruto muttered. But it's only a matter of time. He will want to marry me soon. He's starting to get impatient. We'll come to get you, Naruto promised. Percy nodded at Naruto's statement. Where will we find you? In the Sea of Monster, of course. Grover answered. Roll credits. The Sea of WH, Percy tried to say. Got it. Naruto said. The son of Poseidon looked at him oddly. Thanks, guys. Sorry I had to do the empathy link. It was the only way I could contact you. Our emotions are connected now. If I die. No, you won't, Naruto reassured the satyr. We'll come for you. By the way, was that really a dog? Naruto asked. Yep, he found me back at. Grover was about to explain but the monster returned. Honey pie. The monster bellowed. Dinner time. Yummy yummy sheep. Tell you when you get here. Have to go. Sweet dreams. Don't die. Grover said in a hurry, his voice was getting fainter. Grover, wait. Percy tried to call out, his voice was also getting fainter. Artemis cabin. Naruto woke up in cold sweat just like he did the night before they went back to New York. Another dream. The blonde muttered to himself. I'll have to tell Annabeth. He got up and made his bed. He went directly to the shower. His dream was still bugging him. He was thinking of his satyr friend as he showered until he was getting dressed. As he finished wearing the camp shirt, he sensed a presence at the main door of the cabin. A few seconds later, the presence knocked. Be right there. Naruto shouted as he walked towards the door. He opened the door. Good morning, Naruto. Annabeth greeted. Good morning, Naruto greeted back. So what brings you here? I noticed you weren't up yet. I thought we were going to train early today. So I thought I'd check on you before we had breakfast. Oh, right, sorry. We should rest for today, after all, we're going to have a race. Okay then, is something bothering you? Actually, yeah, come on. I'll walk you to your cabin. I'll tell you on the way. Along the way, Naruto told Annabeth about the dream he had that night. He explained Grover's predicament, and where they could find him. Naruto, the Sea of Monsters is so big, it would take a long time if we would search every inch. Annabeth said. I know, but I have a hunch. Remember the numbers the Grey Sisters spouted in the taxi? Yeah. Those might be coordinates. I can maybe track the monster cause of my mother, but I'll need help at sea. Seaweed brain. Naruto nodded. At that moment, the door opened. A boy with the same hair and eyes as Annabeth greeted them. Hey, guys. The boy greeted. Hey, Malcolm. Naruto greeted back. Listen, Naruto, the now named Malcolm pulled Naruto close to him. Take care of my sister, okay? You mean at the race? No, it's obvious you guys are getting close to each other and the whole camp's talking. But we're not. Naruto, it's okay. I understand. We understand. Malcolm winked at him. Malcolm. I can hear you know. Annabeth said out loud, her cheeks reddening like a tomato. Call our siblings. Let's go to the dining pavilion. The Athena cabin's second-in-command chuckled, while the cabin counselor grumbled, something about stupid siblings. Of course, she didn't mean that. She's just flustered. Anyways. Catch you later, Naruto, he beamed. Good luck at the race. You bet. At the racetrack. Today, it was a hot and humid day for the race. Fog lay low on the ground like the camp was some sort of sauna. Oddly enough, there must have been 1,000 birds roosting on the trees, fat, gray, and white pigeons that didn't coo like regular pigeons. Instead, they made some annoying metallic screeching sound. The racetrack was built on a grassy field between the archery range and the woods. The geniuses at the Hephaestus cabin were able to repair the bulls and use them to plow a track. There were also rows for the spectators, the satyrs, Mr. D, some of the dryads, and all the campers who weren't participating. Oddly enough, Mr. D had woken up to watch the race. According to him, since Chiron wasn't there to play pinochle with, there wasn't anything to keep him busy at this torturous camp, so he'll take any entertainment he can get. Another odd thing was Tantalus wasn't there. The campers positioned their chariots on the track as they waited for the activity's director. Charles Beckendorf led the Hephaestus team onto the track. Their chariot was made of bronze and iron, even the horses, which were magical automatons like the Colchis bulls. Being the children of the Smith god, their ride must have been pimped out with different hidden gadgets. The Ares chariot was blue dread and pulled by 2 grizzly horse skeletons. Clarice climbed aboard with a batch of javelins, spiked balls, caltrops, and a bunch of other nasty toys. She was followed by Mark, one of her siblings. Apollo's chariot was trim and graceful and completely gold, pulled by 2 beautiful palominos. Their fighter was armed with a bow, though he had promised not to shoot pointed arrows at the opposing drivers. Hermes's chariot was green and kind of old-looking, as if it hadn't been out of the garage in years. It didn't look like anything special, but it was manned by the Stahl brothers, so the other charioteers expected some dirty tricks that the brothers had in store. The Athena Artemis chariot was elegant-looking with owl and deer patterns covering it. It was painted gray with silver accents. Manning the chariots were Naruto and Annabeth. A bunch of whispers and giggles could be heard at the stands. Finally, there was the Poseidon chariot to be driven by Percy and Tyson. Percy initially had trouble getting their horses to cooperate since they were scared of the latter. Their chariot was sea green with different sea creatures painted all over and a single trident prominently painted in the middle. The demigods were getting impatient waiting for Tantalus to finally arrive. Poor children were ADHD, to begin with, and he was making them wait. The charioteers were complaining to Mr. D to start the race without him, but the camp director insisted to wait for Tantalus. Percy took a chance to talk to his friends. He too was bothered by Grover hijacking his dream. "Naruto, you got Grover's message too, didn't you?" Percy inquired. "Yeah, we've got to save him no matter what," Naruto declared. "Hey Seaweed Brain, think you can track him at sea?" Annabeth asked. "You know?" Percy asked. Naruto filled me in. "To think, Grover was able to contact both of you through the link. That crafty satyr," Annabeth commented. "We've got to get a quest. And if Grover's really found that thing, we can save Kemp to boot," Naruto said. "What are we talking about?" Percy asked. Annabeth ignored him. "Maybe cause he was still mad at him. We must win this race. It might get us in the good graces of Tantalus." "Right," Naruto agreed. "Not if we beat you," Percy declared. "Remember, my dad created the horses." "Is that a challenge, Water Boy?" Naruto said, getting competitive. "But Aunt Athena created the chariot, so you're only got half the advantage." "So do you," Percy countered. "Oh yeah, Water Boy. Think that advantage would help you?" Naruto challenged. "Yeah, with that dingy thing you made," Percy countered. "Hey," Annabeth complained. "I'm sure it's way better than that half-assed thing you made," Naruto said. "No offense, Tyson," Naruto quickly added. "What?" Tyson shouted back. He didn't really hear what Naruto said. "Nothing," he said back. Both boys stared at each other, neither of them backing down. A few seconds later, the two boys both laughed out loud. "Kidding aside, good luck Percy." Naruto held his fist in front of Percy. "Good luck Naruto." Percy bumped his own fist on Naruto's. "May the best charioteer win." "For Grover," Naruto added. Percy nodded, "For Grover." Annabeth walked towards them, bumped her own fist on the boys, "For Grover." Their moment was broken by the sound of someone's wet shoes squeaking as he walked. All the campers looked in the direction they heard it. It was Tantalus. He was still colored mossy green from the shower prank, but now he was drenched from head to toe with water. "Right," he started. "For today, I will forgive the prankster, whoever you are, for placing my bed in the middle of the lake, because today is the debut of the reinstatement of one of this beloved camp's traditions. Charioteers, to your marks," Tantalus announced. "Catch you later guys," Percy said, to which his two friends nodded. "Hey Perce," Naruto called out. "Don't try too hard. You know we're going to win." Percy chuckled. "Right back at ya." The chariots lined up. More of the weird birds gathered in the woods. Their horrible screeching was so loud now that the campers were starting to take notice. Obviously, the activities director wasn't concerned about this. Attend to your marks. Tantalus' voice strained as it competed with the birds. At the wave of his hands, the chariots roared to life. Hooves thundered against the dirt and the crowd cheered. Almost immediately, the Apollo chariot flipped over. Apparently, the Hermes chariot had rammed into the Apollo chariot. Only the gods knew if it was intentional or not. The riders were thrown free from the chariot, but the horses dragged it diagonally across the track. The Stahl brothers were laughing at the Apollo kids' misfortune when their own misfortune struck. The Apollo horses crashed into theirs, making the Hermes chariot flip too. There were already 2 accidents in the first 20 feet of the race. This didn't bode well. At that time, the Poseidon chariot was pulling ahead of the Ares chariot. They were beside the Hephaestus chariot, who engaged them in contact. Way ahead of the other chariots, the Athena Artemis chariot barreled along with Annabeth driving and Naruto blocking a sword swipe from Mark. The weird pigeons decided to take this moment to rise from the trees. They somehow formed a tornado and were heading towards the track. The charioteers made the first turn. Percy and Tyson were now somehow within 10 feet of Annabeth and Naruto. "Hi Annabeth." "Hi Naruto." Tyson waved his stick at them. "Hey big guy." Naruto greeted back. Annabeth was concentrated on the track to answer. Or maybe he was still afraid of Tyson, who knows. Tyson used his pole to push aside the Athena chariot. "Sorry." He apologized. Naruto parried the pole with a kunai and swatted it aside. "Not quite, Tyson." The big guy was about to try again when a scream came from the Hephaestus chariot. They were mobbed by the birds. Beckendorf's brother tried to fight back, but he couldn't see anything. They veered off course and plowed over the strawberry fields. "Stymphalian birds!" Annabeth yelled. "They'll strip everyone to the bone. Focus on the race." Naruto ordered. "I'll take care of the birds." Annabeth nodded. The blonde shinobi decided to tell the horses to trust in him as well. They were getting through this. Naruto took out a single shuriken and threw it. It was bronze in color. He crossed his fingers to his chest. "Shuriken Kagebunshin no Jutsu." 1 shuriken turned to 2, then to 4. The kunai continued multiplying until there were 100. A bunch of the birds started to drop down dead, killing most of them. "Archers!" Naruto shouted. The Apollo kids managed to pick up their bows and fire away at the birds, thinning their flock, but there was a substantial amount of birds left flying over the campers. The 3 remaining chariots were now head-to-head at the final stretch of the track. Each of the fighters trying to fend off the birds. One of the birds made a mistake of dive-bombing the camp director, knocking the Diet Coke from his hand. Mr. D got really pissed. "Seriously, some flock birds ruin my quiet time." He snapped his fingers and a lot of the birds started to drop dead. "Sorry guys." Naruto shouted. After a blur of hand signs, Naruto slammed his hand on the chariot floor. "Kuchi Yase no Jutsu!" he shouted. A small toad appeared which he picked up. "Please distract them," he told the toad in his native language. "Be careful. They're armed." "Did you just talk to that toad?" Annabeth asked. "Yep. They can understand us, Dateba yo." Naruto explained. The toad jumped over to the chariot next to them. It was the Ares chariot. The toad landed conveniently on Clarissa's hand, startling her. "What the?" The daughter of Ares tried to shake the toad of her hand, but it was sticking to it very well. In an effort to get rid of it, she managed to yank her rope to the left, making their chariot skid into the Poseidon chariot. The toad, then, jumped on. "Hey!" he complained. "Get it off me!" Clarisse took Mark's sword and tried to smack the toad off of his head. With perfect timing, the toad jumped, causing Clarisse to smack her partner with the flat of the sword. She probably did it too hard, because her partner got dizzy and fell off the chariot. The toad, landed just behind the skeleton horses. It turned to Clarisse and sprayed some water on her, causing her to fly off the chariot. That left the toad to deal with the horses. Meanwhile, with the two remaining chariots, the finish line was getting close. The Poseidon chariot was beginning to pull ahead when the toad from earlier jumped into their chariot, startling Tyson. He threw quite the fit, jumping up and down. This made their chariot tip over just in time for Athena chariot to break the ribbon, crowning them the winners. With the race done, Naruto jumped off his chariot, getting ready to finish off the stragglers. Katon, Gokakyu no Jutsu. He shouted and blew a large fireball, scorching most of the birds that the Apollo kids weren't able to hit. It was only a matter of time for them to finish off the rest. Bravo! Tantalus said when he saw that the race was finished after chasing some food. We have our first winners. Yes, well, hoorah and all that. Mr. D said, the boredom still in his voice. He awarded golden laurels to Naruto and Annabeth. Percy managed to get up after getting thrown off his chariot. Tantalus saw him and said, and now to punish the troublemakers. While he was busy looking at Percy, Naruto threw one of the birds at him without him knowing. Help! They're still here! He shouted as he ran like a madman, running away from the birds that only he could see. Is it me, or is something cooking? Someone in the crowd said. After lunch, Percy was with Tyson washing dishes. They were sentenced to kitchen duty because of their bad chariot racing, as Tantalus had put it. It didn't help his case when he answered back sarcastically. Making things worse was the extra plates they had to do, since the new activities director ordered a special luncheon buffet for the winners. So, there they were scrubbing the dishes when Naruto and Annabeth came to them. Need help? Naruto offered. Won't Tantalus look for you guys? Percy asked. Naruto's got that covered, Annabeth answered. Clones. Percy said. You got it. Naruto grinned. So, what were you guys talking about before the race? The thing Grover found. Percy asked. The golden fleece, Naruto answered. Don't spoil him. Annabeth scolded. I was going to make him guess. Heh, sorry. Naruto apologized. I give up, how's that going to help? Percy asked, still confused at what they were talking about. Annabeth sighed. Do you even know the story of the Golden Fleece? You should just tell him. I doubt he remembers. Naruto chuckled. Hey, Percy tried to protest Naruto's teasing, but Annabeth scolded him. Just listen. This is the real story of the fleece. There were these two children of Zeus, Cadmus, and Europa, okay? They were about to get offered up as human sacrifices, but they prayed to Zeus to save them. So, Zeus sent this magical flying ram with golden wool, which picked them up in Greece and carried them all the way to Colchis in Asia Minor. Well, actually it carried Cadmus. Europa fell off and died along the way, but that's not important. It was probably important to her. Percy cut in. Shut up, Percy. Let her explain. Naruto scolded. Thank you, Naruto. Well, Cadmus got to Colchis. He sacrificed the golden ram to the gods and hung the fleece in a tree in the middle of the kingdom. The fleece brought prosperity to the land. Animals stopped getting sick. Plants grew better. Farmers had bumper crops. Plagues never visited. That's why Jason wanted the fleece. It can revitalize any land where it's placed. It cures sickness, strengthens nature, cleans up pollution. It could cure Thalia's tree. Percy realized. Bingo. Finally, you get it. Naruto cheered. Anyway, the fleece wouldn't only cure Thalia's tree. It can give the borders a major power boost. That must be why Grover found it, Percy said. It radiated so much nature energy that he thought it was Pan. This is perfect, we'd be hitting two birds with one stone. Annabeth nodded. Yeah, but just like Naruto told me earlier, there's the Cyclops guarding Grover and the fleece. We'll manage. If Jason could do it, we can too. Naruto told his friends. You don't think this is a trap by Crow, I mean the Titan Lord, Annabeth said. We can't let Thalia die for good and we have to save Kemp and Grover. The blonde shinobi argued. Naruto's right, Percy said. So where do we start looking? Grover told us, didn't he? Naruto answered his clueless friend. Yeah, but where is the Sea of Monsters? The son of Poseidon inquired. Annabeth sighed. Think Percy. The Sea of Monsters was in the Mediterranean when Jason and his crew traveled it. So, when the gods migrated to the Americas. Percy was in thought. Where would you hide a sea full of monsters? Percy, you know that large patch of sea off the coast of Florida. The place where there was an unusually high number of disappearances. The Bermuda Triangle. Exactly. The two blondes said. So all we need to do is ask for a quest, Percy said. He won't listen to you if you ask, but maybe Naruto and me. Annabeth said. And we should tell him in front of everybody. That way, he won't have a chance to disagree. Let's hurry up and finish, I gotta tell Thalia. Naruto quickly began washing the plates, ignoring the shocked looks of his friends as he dipped the plates in lava without flinching. One of Hephaestus' workshops. Hestia walked in hoping to find her nephew working at this particular one. Rows of unfinished projects littered the floor. A low hum could be heard from deeper within the shop. Sitting on the workbench was a huge man with his shoulders at different heights so that he always seems to be leaning in a huge, bulging, misshapen head. His leg was in a creaking steel brace. He had bushy eyebrows and a wild brown beard. I'm glad I found you here, nephew, Hestia said. To what do I owe this visit from my aunt? Hephaestus asked. I'm sure you have sensed the presence of another fire user who is not one of your children, Hestia told the smith god. Hephaestus hummed. You mean Artemis boy? Hestia nodded. I hope you don't mind him using our element. I guess that is fine, he's not using it to cause trouble, is he? No, not at all. In fact, I have made him my champion. Champion, you say? Yes, in addition to that, I have given him my blessing, so I can vouch for him. I suppose I can give him a pass as long as he uses his gifts for the glory of the gods. Thank you for that. I shall take my leave then. This boy, I can feel he has gifts for water as well. Yes, I shall speak to Poseidon about this. With him being his son's friend, I have high hopes for this. I see, farewell, then. Hestia nodded then disappeared. Thalia's limbo. Just like Naruto said, he went directly to see Thalia just like he always did these past days. He had agreed with Percy and Annabeth to speak up to Tantalus about the golden fleece after the sing-along, but that wasn't for much later. Right now, he was busy trying to ease Thalia off her pain. Feel better? Naruto asked. Yes, even just a little, Thalia answered. You don't have to keep doing this, you know. If it's for my friend, I'd gladly do it over and over. The daughter of Zeus smiled. So, I heard you won the chariot races. Yep, but not without the demon pigeons attacking. Sorry about that, if only I could. Naruto cupped her cheek. Sheesh, it's not your fault. It's the poison's fault. Thank you. Thalia held onto Naruto's hand. There was silence after that. Guess what? Naruto spoke up. Grover found a way to save you in camp. Thalia was surprised by the news. Really? That brave little goat. Yes, he managed to find the golden fleece. The blonde continued. There's just one problem. His voice trailed off. He's getting married. What? Thalia had a dumbfounded look on his face. Yes, yes. It's true. Naruto nodded. Grover's getting married. Thalia couldn't believe it. Yes, that's what I said. With who? With Polyphemus the Cyclops. Thalia's mouth hung wide open. When she got over the shock, she said, Come on, be serious. This is Grover we're talking about. The Cyclops thinks he's a female Cyclops. That's the only thing keeping him alive. What are the odds? Thalia managed. Oh gods, you've got to save him. Naruto nodded. We're asking for a quest to save him and retrieve the fleece. We're probably leaving tomorrow. I probably won't. It's okay, I will manage. A conch horn blew in the distance signaling dinner time. I better go. Naruto's voice trailed off. Be careful. Thalia said. You better come back with Grover. That's the plan. Naruto grinned with his thumb up. Before Naruto could go, Thalia rushed over and kissed Naruto on the cheek. For good luck. The blonde was at a loss for words. That's it for part 1. Thank you for watching and see you on the next video.